Hello, my name is Cynthia Samaniego, and today I'd like to share with you the history of tipping. In the US, many Americans are expected to tip at restaurants, although most of the time we just question how much should we be tipping. Some of us base it off of how much the bill was. The higher the bill, the more you tip. The lower the bill, the less you tip. Some of us base this on how well the service was. The better the service, the more you tip. The worse the service, the very least you tip. Or some of us feel like it's not fair that we are paying 2 fees for 1 service. All those are pretty well rounded questions, I suppose, but maybe we should think about where tipping came from and why is it so normal in the US. The history of tipping may come as a shock to you, so let's begin with where it originated. It originated in 17th century taverns in England, where customers would slip money to the waiters in order to ensure promptitude. To ensure promptitude, T-I-P. So now we know where the word tip came from. Well, Americans saw this, adopted this custom, and brought it back to the United States in order to show off their education and class. Originally, many Americans did not think that tipping was considered American. They considered it un-American and undemocratic. Although by the end of the Civil War, the views on tipping drastically changed. Racism was still the norm during this time, and white people believed themselves to be more superior than black people. That being said, slaves, newly freed slaves, were only hired in positions that were considered unskilled positions, primarily in the restaurant business. Racist restaurant owners would hire black people and would use tips as a form of payment instead of actually paying them wages. Americans responded to this quite positively. They felt that themselves tipping put them in a position of superiority. It was natural for them to tip their inferiors. Although if a black person tipped a white waiter, that was considered extremely disrespectful. By the 1880s, black workers accounted for nearly half of the hospitality industry. And during the Prohibition, restaurant owners were losing money and strongly encouraged customers to tip in order to avoid paying wages to their employees. Over time, tipping became the norm, and in 1938, Congress passed America's first minimum wage law, allowing states to set lower minimum wages for tipped workers. And in 1966, Congress set a 2-tiered wage system for tipped and non-tipped workers. Tipped workers' minimum wage was set to $2.13 per hour. Today, in 17 states, the minimum wage for tipped workers is still $2.13. Although now employers are responsible for paying up to the minimum wage to their tipped workers if they cannot come up with the money from tips. More simply said, if you are a tipped worker and you don't make any tips and your wage does not meet minimum wage, your employer is responsible to pay you up to minimum wage. Unfortunately, not many people know this, and many people are going with unbalanced and unrealistic wages in today's society. A century later, the inherent racism of tipping persists. Non-white restaurant workers take home about 56% less than their white peers. The history of tipping began in English taverns in order to ensure promptitude, but was adopted from Americans and completely changed. Americans changed tipping as a form of keeping racism alive at post the Civil War, and also to avoid paying people their deserved wages. I'd like to know your opinion on tipping and what you think of it now that you know where it came from. Do you think tipping should still be allowed? Do you believe that we should be paying two fees for one service? Do you believe it's still considered a form of being more superior than the lower class? Will you continue to tip, or would you discourage others? Please let me know what you think, and thank you for listening, and have a wonderful day.